Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am PANCZASU and welcome back to Endless Legend Guardians expansion and the start of a new series dedicated entirely to the Ardent Mages. It's been a long time coming. Last time I covered them was way back when in beta, when their units weren't even properly working. But this is my favorite faction out of all factions in Endless Legend, and there were numerous requests for me to cover them, so I am gladly going to do that right now in the Guardians of the Auriga expansion as well. However, before we start, I would like to make two tiny little announcements. Number one, I am currently suffering from allergies, fairly severe ones. I have taken my medicine, so I should be able to talk more or less. However, my throat is kinda sore, and I may be sniffing. There's a rainbow. I have never noticed that before. Oh, it's gone. Anyway, like I said, I have allergies, so do watch out for that. I'm sorry, it's not like I can help it. Second thing, this videocast is, by the time you watch it, several days old most likely. What you're seeing now, for you, is the past. For me, it's the present. That's because I have decided to not upload any of those videos until I have a good stockpile of them already uploaded on YouTube. And I'll only publish them once either all of them or a good portion of them are already completed. Why? It's because I want to have more consistent publications. It's as simple as that. I want you to be able to more reliably predict when you're going to see new videos. So that's all there is to it. Now, without further ado, let's start talking about Ardent Mages. Now, as I usually do, I'm going to start by going through the factional overview, but before I actually do that, I would like to point out how much the Ardent Mages have changed in their playstyle as a result of the Guardians expansion, compared to the other factions at the very least. And the answer is, out of all those factions, they were changed the least. Other factions were influenced in many more ways by the Guardians edition than the Ardent Mages. I found myself playing Ardent Mages exactly like I always have been in this expansion, and it works. So there is very little change in my personal strategy, but nonetheless, I do want to showcase to you exactly what kind of strategies I have in mind when it comes to this faction. So let's have a quick look at them. What are Ardent Mages, you may ask, those of few of you that don't know that? Well, they are pain freaks that power their magic through pain. How do you play as them? Well, there's a misconception going around the internet and the forums, in fact, that since their main victory tab is apparently science, they're the kind of guys that take their sweet time, get their technological advantage and win in late game. No, that is completely the wrong view of it. At least it is wrong if you assume that they are being passive. They are not passive, they are the opposite of passive, they are the most active, aggressive faction in this entire game, because unlike all the other factions, they can actually attack at any point in the game. They are amazing at early game rushing, including extremes like beating an opponent, like completely annihilating any opponent within 20 turns. It's easy, actually. Well, not easy, but it's doable as them. No matter the opponent, no matter if it's multiplayer or single player, I've done it many times. Additionally, they can also fight very well in medium game. Not medium game, how's it called? Middle game. My apologies. That's because of the addition of Anchor Wings and empowering of their spells. And finally, in late game, because they are pretty good at science, they can also fight extremely well because of the technological advantage. So no matter what point in the game you are, as Ardent Mages, you can be aggressive. And I'll tell you a little secret. You want to be aggressive as well. If you're not being aggressive as the other mages, you are probably going to lose on quite a lot, because other factions have those amazing traits that change their playstyle drastically. Other mages just can use spells by themselves when it comes to economy, despite having pretty good heroes and whatnot that tailor them towards science in a slight way. They do not have any major advantages, like for example Volters and Mazari, who are extremely good with science, and not only that, in fact. So other mages, in order to stay competitive, they need to be aggressive. Thankfully, they are very good at being aggressive as well. So let's go through their abilities and units one by one. First of all, their Power for Pain gives them access to pillars and spells. Now, as for the pillars, you place them on the map and they modify the tiles around them. Like for example, Arcana of Agility, as you can see, gives you access to Pillar of Speed. Now, those pillars They are usually very much so worthwhile, giving you good bonuses for a fairly lengthy period of time, and depending on the situation, you may find them to be completely game-changing, especially in early game, because you start the game by having access to, where on earth is it? There we go, Arcana of Matter, which gives you a very nice boost to science in early game. It's extremely useful. However, what is perhaps even more important to talk about is their access to spells. Spells, well, as you can see, they are actually listed in here as well. Incarnation of Defense, for example, is the one, and this is Incarnation of Haste. There are 5 incarnations in total. Now, they are actually fairly tricky to use, despite what some of you may think. So let me go through them one by one and explain why. Firstly, why should be fairly obvious. They cost a lot of dust to activate. So one, for example, could cost as much as 80 dust. So you spend 80 dust on just using something that will act for just 1 or perhaps 2 turns in a battle, as opposed to casting a pillar that will affect your entire, well, not empire, but at the very least city, for example, for several turns of game time rather than battle time. So in theory, you can see that pillars, also being cheaper, are much more cost efficient. Yes, however, in battles, more often than not, you'll find yourself needing this extra push to actually be able to win them decisively, and the spells can give you just that. Casting them at critical moments can grant you the advantage that will allow you to beat theoretically stronger opponents, which is very important. You need to know, however, when to cast them and how to cast them, in what situations and what spells to use. Let's go through them one by one real quick. Firstly, we've got the Incarnation of Defense. You start with this one. It gives you extra defense for your units. Overall, I would say that this is pretty much garbage tier, unfortunately. It does have its uses, and I do use it occasionally when I do want to have this extra defense. It is also very cheap. For a spell, it's expensive, but it's compared to the other spells, it's cheap. However, you most of the time want to be casting other spells, because you cannot cast multiple spells at the same time. You have to choose one over the other. Incarnation of Defense rarely takes priority, especially because it also scales pretty badly. Now, however, on the other hand, Arcana of Agility gives us Incarnation of Haste. It scales way better than Incarnation of Defense. It costs exactly the same, and it's pretty devastating. If you cast Incarnation of Haste on your units at the appropriate time, they gain a lot of extra attack, and this will allow you to hit otherwise unhittable enemy, or crit an enemy and get a kill when you would normally not be able to do so. It's actually extremely useful, especially in early and middle game, but it also carries its usefulness all the way even to the late game, because 30 attack can always make a fairly big difference. It's probably my favorite spell, because it's the most cost efficient one by far. Now the next one we have, not Renew, it's the Arcana of Material, no, I'll find it, oh there we go. Authority gives you access to Incarnation of Enervation. It's a stun spell. Now, normally I would say that it's great. Yes, it does cost more than the previous 2 spells, however, it stuns at the very lowest level, it stuns 1 target. At level 2 or higher, it stuns all targets in a circle, which by itself sounds amazing, doesn't it? It only stuns them for 1 turn, yes, and you can cast it every 2 turns. Nonetheless, you can imagine the possibilities. And on further levels, it even lowers the enemy defense by a percentage base. That's insane, you may think. Yes, but there is a problem. It's unreliable. Now, I'm actually, to be completely honest with you, not sure if it's intended or if it's a result of a bug. But currently, at least from my experience, whenever I cast the spell, it doesn't always stun the enemies. Sometimes it does stun the enemies, sometimes it doesn't, and you end up wasting your spell and your dust and whatnot. I feel like this is a bug. It might not be. I actually haven't confirmed it yet, my apologies. Nonetheless, in this current build, I kinda tend to avoid this spell, as useful as it is. That said, when we are talking late game, this is probably, assuming it works more reliably, the most powerful spell you have at your disposal. The other 2 spells we have were Arcana of Renew, that's one, that's actually the latest one. So where is the other one? Arcana of, not Agility, Materializing, there we go. This one actually gives you, doesn't give you anything, it just deals damage to enemy units. It does have its uses. Now, most of the time I prefer to use the Incarnation of Haste, because I find it to be more useful to buff the amount of damage or how reliable your units will deal damage, rather than dealing a minor, and it is a really minor amount of damage that you can deal to the enemy units. However, there are situations when it's useful. For example, if you have a small army of champ blockers fighting against vastly superior enemy army, it might be more worthwhile to just cast an incantation of deluge on the enemy units, dealing amount of damage that you would normally be unable to deal. One problem, it's expensive, so you do want to have a bank to do it. But if you do have a bank, then that's great, you can use this spell fairly well in certain situations. And last but by no means least is the Arcana of Renewal. I both love and do not love it at the same time. The one problem with the spell is, in late game, which is when you get it, it's the last spell you get. If I'm not mistaken, I sometimes get mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it's the last one. It's getting even 50 extra life regeneration units. It's not that amazing, considering how much health units tend to have. It's still not bad, but it's not as amazing as it may sound. However, two things that you need to keep in mind. Firstly, the overall gameplay of Ardent Mages is revolving around juggling your HP, because your units, all of your units, we'll talk about that in a second, have the Ardent Fire ability, which means that they convert percentage of their lost HP into attack, which means that they are more likely to hit and deal critical damage when they are low on HP. So you want to juggle your HP so that it's always low, but above the safety threshold, so that you can survive an enemy hit, but you will have increased attack as a result of having taken damage. So Incantation of Restoration is useful for that. Additionally, when you are having a prolonged war with the enemy, it allows you to stay in the front lines for a little bit longer. Again, useful. It is, however, again, as most of the late game spells, expensive. So there is that. As for the units, let's start with the Warlock. Now, Warlock is perhaps the most underestimated unit in the entire game by far. Because people look at it and they are like, oh, those stats aren't that amazing, and it doesn't feel that strong, right? No, it's actually a good unit. It's actually a really good infantry unit. So let's have a quick look at the stats. They are good on their own already. Look at the damage and attack and compare them to something else. For example, let's compare them to the Star Wars. As you can see, attack and damage is nowhere near to what the Warlocks have. Or for example, let's go again to Draconlings. Again, far, far behind it. Let's go to Foragers. Again, far, far behind it. And I think you see where this is going, right? So again, when it comes to dealing damage, Warlocks are good on their own. So what do you say? They have no defense and little life, they die very easily. They also cannot use the Ardent Fire as a result of die, because they are more often than not one-shot. Wrong. When you use Warlocks most frequently is in early game. In early game, the enemy units will not be able to kill them in a single shot. In fact, they are more likely going to be able to only damage them after a single shot. Which means that when Warlocks retaliate, which will happen because they have lower initiative, Warlocks will actually have vastly increased attack, allowing them to fairly frequently deal critical damage to the enemy via the use of their extremely high attack, especially in early game. They are extremely good for that, very cost efficient as well, and they are horribly underappreciated. I'm not saying they are the best infantry units or anything along those lines. I'm just saying you need to respect them more, because they are a really, really good unit. And just because their defense and life is low for an infantry unit doesn't mean that they are bad inherently. In fact, they are good. Now, next off, we've got Attaché Zealots. Those guys went through a lot. They used to be called witches, they used to be the most overpowered unit in Endless Legend history. Oh, those were the days. Now they're not. The ability Fire Rain gives them area of effect damage on the enemy units, as you are probably aware. However, this area of effect damage is very, very, very weak. Usually you can only rely on it to finish off an enemy unit that has like 1 HP left, that you barely were not able to kill. Then you can use Fire Rain Fire Rain's area of effect to finish the enemy unit off. Fair enough, I suppose. When it comes to stats, again, nothing that special aside from attack. Attack is really, really good at 48. That's, again, it's something that is very high, and not too many units in this entire game have attack that is this high. However, let's compare that to, for example, the Care Ranger, which is a cheaper unit. It has 51 attack, and as you can see, it has also high initiative damage. It has less, mistaken things. No, yeah, it does have less damage than Attaché Zealot. And do not forget about the Nameless Guards, which are amazing archers with 55 attack and 32 whooping damage. So you can say that, well, compared to those two guys, the Ardent Mages Zealots are not that amazingly powerful, in all honesty. Yes, stat-wise, they are not as scary as most ranged units are. In fact, they are, I would say, below them. However, there is something that you cannot forget about, and that is the fact that they are Ardent Mages units. And they are not regular archers, they are considered support units, which means that they have the abilities of a spellcaster, that being the abilities to cast Slowdown, as you can see, or alternatively Unsteady. Additionally, they do have the Ardent Fire, which you can use. What I like to do is, when I have multiple armies, right, one of those armies is, for example, filled with Attaché Zealots only, and it's a support army that reinforces my main army. What I do is I let the enemy attack my army composing exclusively of Attaché Zealots, and I retreat on purpose, unless it's a very easy fight. But I retreat on purpose to lose 50% of my HP. For Zealots, it means nothing. They have paper thin armor anyway, they die extremely easily anyway, so losing half of the HP is not that big of a deal, but it does boost their attack by a lot once they have lost 50% of their HP. Which means that when you enter a proper battle, you deal extremely reliable damage with those zealots of yours, and you are likely going to have more attack even than the enemy nameless guards, which is in fact a very good steal, considering that you also have the area of effect ability, which, as I said, is not amazing, but it's still something, you know, it does deal extra damage. And again, the spells that they have are very useful. I like to mix my zealots up so that I have let's say 66% of my zealots with the ability of Unsteady, which lowers the enemy attack, and then the remaining zealots with the ability of Slow Down to make sure that the enemy cannot reach my ranged units too quickly. And overall, a very good unit. It has been nerfed to oblivion compared to how overpowered it used to be, but it's still very good. And finally, man, it's taking forever, Anchor Wings, or Phoenixes as I oftentimes call them. They are, well, I like them a lot. As you can see, this stat line, again, this is something that is fairly frequent with other mages. It's not the best, but it is, unlike with the previous two units where it's arguably below average, in this case it's certainly above average. 50 attack is only matched by this guy over here, the Yermak, who also has 50 attack. And no other unit can possibly match this amount of attack. I'm like, there's also the Nameless Guard. I'm talking about the melee units, however. So anyway, out of the melee units, 50 attack is absolutely beastly. Additionally, the damage, 44, is very good. Defense and initiative are okay, nothing special, and life is fairly low. Alright, when you look at those stats, you can say, well, they're good, but aren't they the same, more or less, as Necrodon stats? Yes, they are pretty the same. In fact, I like Necrodon a little bit better because of its whooping 48 damage. I mean, of course, the difference in damage is not that big, but you know, I like the damage. However, I would also pick Anchor Wing over a Necrodon any day of the week. Why? Because of its Ardent Fire and Revive abilities. Firstly, Ardent Fire, again, you take some damage and this guy turns into a monster. It already has very highly based attack, so imagine this with Ardent Fire ability. It tears through enemy armies like there's no tomorrow. They are not quite as glass cannon as the Necrodons, and the reason for that is because they also have the Revive ability, which means that when they get killed, they turn into an egg, and if that egg is not killed, they respawn with half HP and wreak havoc again. And if you end a battle with an egg, then you automatically gain again an Anchor Wing at half HP. It's pretty effing beastly, and it means that potentially you can infinitely respawn your entire army, which is effing amazing. They are great at surgical strikes and enemy key positions, not necessarily the ideal unit to use for the front lines. I per se prefer to use an assimilated minor faction for that, but they are nonetheless extremely good and very punishing when it comes to attacking the damage and dealing damage. Attacking the damage? I meant to say attacking the enemy. So there is that. That's the quick quote-unquote rundown on those units of this faction. How will I play as it? Well, this remains to be seen, doesn't it? As for the game settings, I am going to put the speed scale factor on very fast, so I can play through some of the more tedious battles without wasting too much time. I don't want to waste time, obviously. All the victory conditions are on. Temperature is at temperate, because temperate temperatures for the win. We're going to only be playing with 6 players. I don't want this game to be too long. Everybody is going to be random, and other things are as random as it gets, with some exceptions. I set the land percentage on the 70%. because I just like it. Personal preference, really. Yeah, let's leave it at that. I'm tempted to turn it random, but I will not. Many of riddles and clevers because it creates interesting tactical situations and of course rare resources, hard factions and no anomaly odds. With all that said, I'm going to pause recording, load the world and I'll resume from there. Stay tuned. And we're back. For you it has been just a moment. For me it's been probably about 45 minutes, the time I needed to let my throat regenerate and so on, and now I feel reinvigorated and ready to record again. Unfortunately, my allergies do require me to take regular breaks from recording. Now, we have loaded in, and the area we're in actually seems surprisingly good compared to what we usually get, so I'm not gonna complain about that. Plenty of rivers around and overall warm environment, which means a lot of dust, and in addition there's plenty of both food and industry production. Not a lot of science aside from this little area over here, and something tells me I'm probably gonna want to settle on this ridge. Why? Because I want to make my way over to the salt desert later and also grab more of those river tiles, while simultaneously also not ignoring the benefits of this area. I can see some ruins around here, but I doubt there are any other anomalies nearby. So in either way, let's move my cellar right away. Because I know where a good spot is already from just looking at this area, I'm gonna go ahead and settle over there. So let's move the cellar slightly. Of course, if I see something new, in a moment I'll change my... Yeah, okay, I can do it. For a second I was afraid I couldn't do it in one turn, but I can. Let's move one step at a time, and it looks like I have discarded nothing else. It's surprisingly warm. I'm on the furthest south location, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. And, well, surprisingly enough, it's apparently deserty, which is very surprising. There is steppe soil, which is actually a very good thing, but the problem is there's the wasteland, end of the world, right next to it. So, first of all, I wouldn't be able to settle on the next 10, on this 10 rather, if I wanted to sit over there. And secondly, one town is west. It's still a very good town, all things considered, but in all honesty, I'd rather settle on this 10 and be satisfied with this. Later on, I might expand in this direction. So let's go ahead and do this. It's very important for you as the Ardent Mages to settle on the first 10. As other factions, you can consider waiting for a little bit longer, but as Ardent Mages, it's incredibly important, in my opinion, to settle as quickly as humanly possible. So, I have settled down, and let's continue on with the scouting, shall we? So first things first, I do see some juicy ruins around here, so let's go ahead and grab those, see what is inside. Within 5 turns, see a relic. Now, I don't really like this quest for early game. Yes, those relics are oftentimes pretty good, but also oftentimes they are unreliable because you get a relic that you personally cannot equip with your current hero, which is kind of worthless. It also forces you to search particular ruins rather than explore the area around you. So I'm actually gonna choose to ignore this quest for the time being. Why? It's because I really need to get a good look at my surroundings. I need to see all there is to see within my region. I need to see if there are any strategic resources and where is the minor faction, because I need to pacify it ASAP. It's very, very important. And all the reasonings I'll explain to you as we move along with this game. So let's have a quick look. There's the Guaran, but it's for the other region. We'll still be able to talk to them at some point. I don't want to attack them. I could, but it would be fairly dumb. So there is that. Now, with my city and with my... never mind. For a second, I wanted to say that I could have gotten these ruins with my cellar, but there's a cliff, so no, I couldn't have actually gotten the ruins with my cellar. Anyway, what is the build order I'm going to go for in this particular playthrough? Well, there are 3 build orders that I personally use when I play as the Ardent Mages. The first one is perhaps my favorite. It's an insane rush technique that is incredibly difficult to pull off. I seriously need to concentrate a ton while doing it, and it's extremely risky. You put all your eggs into one basket and you go for an absolute rampage in a very, very, very early game. You just go in extremely quickly. If it works, and if you do it correctly, it does work, you can kill anything. No matter who you're fighting, AI or human, no matter the difficulty level, no matter the faction, you will kill them. It's a fact. But if you make the slightest mistake, you're dead. I, as a result of that, will not do it on camera because I would not be able to do it without any mistakes. It requires extreme amounts of concentration. It is a build order, but I'm not gonna show it to you. Besides, I out of all the build orders I'm willing to share with you, it's just the one I want to keep for myself. You know, just to torment my friends from time to time. Anyway, the secondary build order, which I'm going to show to you right now, well, I suppose I'll explain it in a moment. It's going to be fairly rush-based, but it's not gonna go into extreme. It's gonna mean that I'll be ready to be on the aggressive side of things, but at the same time, I'll also take care of my economy at least a little bit, so I'll not necessarily be a constant warmonger. The last build is an extremely greedy build, which I'm not particularly fond of it. It does bring me some good results, but I personally prefer the build order I'm going to show to you now. So first things first, let's have a quick at our city, shall we? So, can I move my population to get... Yes, I can move my population, and I'll gain population growth in a single turn no matter what, which is fairly great. And I can walk on Founders Memorial much faster as a direct result of that. My population is happy. Again, wonderful starting location. Usually you get worse starting locations than that, so I cannot complain about that one bit. Nonetheless, the build order would be exactly identical even if my starting location wasn't as good. What I would do in research tree is I would go for very, very specific order of things. Firstly, the Mill Foundry, followed up by Language Square, followed up by Cultivation, Empowerment, Attaché Zealot, Public Library. Bam! That's completely different to my usual Holy Trinity of Mill Foundry into Cultivation into Public Library, I know, but this is coming through a lot of practice, and this particular technology build order works well for me regardless of the overall plans I have for a game. It's very universal. It allows you to be very aggressive very early on if you want to or if you need to, because of the language square, you'll be able to complete your faction quest very early, giving you access to 2 free attaché zealots very quickly, and additionally also giving you benefits from just completing the quests. So it already gives you a lot of early advantages before most players can get them. Then you get the required food, you cannot get around that. But then you immediately go for extra dance, which allows you to cast more spells when you need them. Again, extremely crucial for early aggression. And even if you do not plan on going for early aggression, it's very good because it helps you with your overall economy and allows you to, if you want to, establish more cities more quickly. Which is why I really like this build order, because on one hand you can use it to be extremely aggressive if you decide to, or if you feel like you want to be peaceful. You can still get a good army defending you, but at the same time it gives you the solid backup you can use to expand your empire to ridiculous degrees. And also, most other factions cannot do that as well, because they wouldn't have the army to protect such a rapid expansion with hard neutral factions, but you will be able to do so because of your army advantage. Zealots, I do not need to explain. They are the core unit of the Ardent Mages army. At least until you get the Anchor Wings, then it's more debatable. And after that, you do need to get the Public Library no matter what, but you can wait a little bit longer with that. And the cool thing about everything is that you're still gonna be able to go through this tech tree very quickly, because you will have access to the Pillar of Knowledge, which is a very nifty thing indeed. You place it down, bam, and as you can see, it just gave extra 2 cents to all tiles around it. So right now it's only giving me this particular bonus on 4 of those tiles, but it's still, as you can see, a very substantial bonus, allowing me to get Mill Foundry in just 2 turns, which is extremely useful. It also will allow me to get Language Square similarly quickly, and as such, again, it also allows me to ignore Public Library for a little bit longer, which is something other empires cannot do. It's a very important leverage that you can use as an Ardent Mage that other players, I mean, if you're either playing as other faction, you do have to go for Public Library fairly quickly, unless you are a rusher as well. So there is that. Anything else I need to mention on turn 1? I'm trying to remember. Oh yes, before I forget, because I sometimes do forget. And this is something that you need to keep practicing on yourself, because it's fairly important to get into, a habit of doing that. Is modify your settler so that he's got extra movement. It's very important because it allows you to settle new cities faster, and it's really, in my opinion, well worth it. So let's make this modification. As for the Thessalian Warlocks, what do I do with them? It depends. Usually at the start I'll leave them blank, but if I sense some early aggression, I tend to modify them a little bit by giving them the helmet and the armor, and also giving the weapon that they need to counter the enemy. For example, if I face cavalry, that would be the spear. And why this particular outfit? Well, both Helm and the Cuirass gives you extra health, which again is an indirect buff to your attack, because once you get hit, it buffs your attack, which is fairly nice. It also allows those guys to survive for way longer, especially in early game. It is expensive, but this is probably the only unit in the game, the starting unit in the game, that I would advise to, when you want to use them, to actually use the iron equipment. It is actually useful. Usually I would say it's not cost effective because it does cost a lot of industry. In this case, you can actually use it because of the Ardent Fire ability. Right now, however, there's no need to do that. If I do want to make some Warlocks, this will probably be against minor factions, so I don't really care too much. And I'll probably want to just have more of them acting as scouts, in which case, again, I want them to be equipped with exactly nothing. Anyway, let's end the turn. Now, as for my enemies, I know they are Draken, which is a bit annoying, but not a very big deal. Quest added, I need to but parley with at least 2 villagers, which is why you need the... what's it called again? Language square, that's how it's called. In order to complete this quest, you get the one, and then you have to go to ruins, which will give you the units. Extremely easy quest to do, gives you a nice early bonus in both units and resources, and you would be foolish not to go over it. So anyway, let's keep exploring a little bit. There could be a minor faction here, so let's check it. No, there is none. So what areas have I not discarded? This area and this area. It's a fairly big region I have, and oh boy, blue player is nearby those ruins. Well, that's good to know. So there will be opportunity for early aggression, possibly, but this is still far enough away from my capital for me not to go too crazy about the possibility of early aggression. It's a thing I could do, but in all actuality, against the blue player, I probably won't unless they expand towards me. Mill Foundry done. I cannot make it right now, but still, things are progressing at a fairly rapid pace, which is what I like to see. I can move up population, because it's very important, imperative to my survival. Well, not survival, but more likely success to actually get Mill Foundry constructed as quickly as possible, obviously. Science completed, well, we know that. Language square done in just 110, which makes me tempted to leave one unit behind in order to talk to the Warren. Now, there is both advantage and disadvantage to that. Disadvantage is very big. You get an extra army, which does cost you dust. Which is why I kept those 2 units together with my hero all this time, is because I really do not want to be in a situation when I gain less dust. I will need a lot of it soon. And I do not feel very comfortable with leaving one unit behind, even if it is to talk to another village. In honesty, what I'm gonna do now is just stay here with my army. That's how badly I'm scared of running out of dust. You will see, right now you may be thinking that this is going a little bit far. A few turns with slightly less dust income, that's not a big deal. In middle game it will be a big deal. Until you gain a reliable source of dust income, you will be struggling to maintain your dust income. So... yeah, trust me when I say it. When you can, try to save your dust. Anyway, let's talk to those guys, see what they want. Make sure there's no enemy army in this region. Should be easy to complete. 80 dust and pacification for doing nothing. I do like that. The coolest thing is, well, the quest will not finish before there are some enemies spawned in this region, but there will be very few of them spawned, so it's not gonna be a big thing. I'm gonna go like here now, because this would be faster. Well, not really faster, but I wanna see what there is to see in this area, more or less, and see if there are more Guaran villagers nearby that I can talk to. Also, this region in general seems fairly good. It does have dice, it also has the dragon tree, so I might go for the fairly rapid expansion technology of the aggressive build order as planned. We will see how it goes. Have a cultivation done in 2 turns. In 2 turns I also get the mill foundry, so as you can see, perfect synergy right there. In fact, I'll probably get a bit of industry overflow with the additional population I'm gonna get, but this is fine. Once I have a little bit more stuff, I will consider going for a settler. But again, I need to see a little bit more of terrain around me in order to do that. Now, as for the Ardent Mages heroes, this thing is rather tricky. Ardent Mages heroes are my least favorite kind of heroes in the entire game. Ardent Mages faction is my favorite faction, but the heroes are my least favorite, unfortunately. They do not have a very good set of skills, and they do not... what's the word for that? What's the word I'm looking for? Not coexist, but... not cooperate, coordinate, no. Surge, no. They do not work necessarily well with the advantages of other Ardent Mage things. There is one specific word, it's it's on the top of my mind. I can't remember it. I'm sorry, but I think you know what is the word I'm looking for. Regardless, the problem with the synergy. That's it. Synergy. Okay, that was painful actually. Anyway, my brain hurts. So the problem is those guys have little synergy. When you go to faction, there are 3 things that give you a lot of science, which is nice for cities, I suppose. And then they have 2 things that are good for battle, except extra attack on hero. Those heroes are not the best damage dealers. I mean, they do deal some damage, but they have increased fire, which allows them to increase the damage of friendlies, which is like makes their damage pointless, and the damage is big. So again, anti-synergy between increased fire and their base stats, and then you can increase their base stats even more so, but instead you could go for a more useful ability. As for extra attack on units, it is useful, but where can you go off of that? Nowhere particularly interesting, in all honesty. And to get it, you need to either go through here or through here. Again, neither of those options are particularly useful or interesting to me. As for the class tree, it is a bit more interesting. It does give you access to an extra attack, which it does work okay with other mages units, but for the most part with Ardent Fire and your spells, you'll probably have enough attack, although 50% is still nice. Initiative is very useful actually on the Zealots, but it's not that crucial. And as for life is again good, but it's, you know, all things considered, it does feel a little bit underwhelming, and I prefer personally to use those guys as governors, especially if I have a lot of anomalies near my cities. And when I do that, I go like this because it gives me a nice access to a lot of abilities, and also allows me to keep my scientific edge. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now the thing is though, I'm not gonna unequip my hero from my army and make him govern the city just yet. Why? Because I want this hero to gain as many levels as quickly as possible. So I'm gonna keep the hero with my army in order to just level him up or her up a little bit more. Okay, so let's see. Within 1 turn, yeah, I'm not gonna reach those ruins. Jodus, they are in a nearby region, but still, I will be able to parley with them, which is fairly important and nice, so there's that done. Nothing else that requires my attention, which is good enough. I could now, this is very important, I could place another Pillar of Knowledge, but it costs 53 dust. And as useful as it is, right now, I actually don't need it, because no matter what, I'm gaining technology at a rate that is as fast, or even in most cases, it will be faster than your construction rate. You will not be able to keep up with your science, and as a result, what will be the point? So anyway, I am tempted to go for another cellar. It looks like there are no AIs near to me, and this region seems particularly tasty from what I've seen and gathered so far. At the same time, I do have fairly limited intel, so I'll probably go for cultivation first before deciding if I do want to go for an early settler, and this way I can settle a city after 1010, so after I do pick my empire plan. So let's wait for a little bit longer, play it nice and steady. What I will do, however, is move some of my population into death production. Like so, because I don't need those guys. Or actually, even better yet, food production, because I do actually need food right now. And like this, nice and easy. Let me take a sip of drink. It warmed up. That's not very good. Anyway, further quest, that was to be expected in all honesty. So, this is a cliff too. Oh man, I really thought that you can walk through here, which is why I walked to this tower. This is actually gonna be very annoying. Oh well, things like that are unavoidable, and hello there. There's a blue player right next to me who has indeed expanded towards me. That was a very rapid expanse as well, mind you, so how do I react to that? Well, I don't know who it is just yet, but I don't know who it is. I do need to find out who it is, but right now I need to make a choice very quickly as to what I'm going to do. And the problem is, blue could be Brokerlots, could be other mages, it could be Draken, all kinds of people who I could rush effectively, but it would be difficult and possibly not pay off at this point in time, especially, I mean, I could still do it, but what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play it aggressively, but with a city in the background acting as a backup. So instead of going for seed storage right now, I'm gonna go for an early settler and walk as hard on the settler as possible. Unfortunately, if I knew that blue is gonna be this nasty, I would have walked exclusively on industry for a little bit longer, so that I would be able to get the settler maybe a little bit faster, but unfortunately that was not the case. Anyway, let's go ahead and also grab the extra... I don't really need the extra influence all that much. I'll just work extra on industry so that I can get city stretch a little bit faster once I'm done with the settler. So there's that done. Never make a settler, by the way, when you have less than 3 population. 3 is the bare minimum, in my opinion. There are some build orders that allow you to do that, but I'm not particularly fond of them. Anyway, let's finish this tab. Those guys, well, they'll be a little bit annoying, but not particularly. And I'm pretty sure they actually are from my region, because this region nearby has Jodis. Boss, not the best allies to partner up with. I'm not a huge fan of them. But, you know, they can... With the free counter, they can be fairly good champ blockers for the rest of your army. Not necessarily the best, though. Either way, I know that there's this village over here, so I'm gonna parley with those guys. Nice and easy. Rumors of rogue troops nearby. That's my faction quest. And those guys have too many chiefs, so now I've completed this. Alright, good. I just need to go over here to get my extra army, which is nice and easy. I'll stop by those ruins over here while I'm doing that. And maybe I'll discover who the blue player is as well. Usually I would be afraid to meet the blue player, because this would trigger AI's countdown to being very annoying and nasty. And trying to kill me horribly as quickly as possible. But I'm Ardent Mages. Killing is the art that I'm particularly fond of. And, or rather my faction is. So I don't think... If those guys want to rush me, by all means... I want them to rush me. Anyway, let's end the 10. Man, this drink was supposed to be delicious, but it's too warm. I will need to cool it up. I'm just gonna drink some water then. Alright, then. Let's search those ruins. 10 spices. This is actually fairly good. I can use them, and I can use the wine as well at the same time. I'll activate both of those boosters as I'm about to settle my second city, though, in order to maximize the benefits. I think it's fairly self-explanatory as to why I would do that. Next then I get the cellar, right after that, seed storage, unless empowerment is not done yet. That's a bit annoying. I was hoping to get empowerment but by that point. Alright, now I need to make a decision. What do I want to do with this particular city? Because, of course, we do have those structures that can be built only once in my empire, and I need to start thinking about, is this city going to be something that I will want to place this kind of thingy in? Well, that's fairly descriptive, isn't it? Honestly, I'm not too sure yet. I have seen very little of this region, and this, depending on the area around this dragon tree, I may choose to go for food focus on Yag. Why? Because there are a lot of rivers around that I would gain a lot of benefit from if I were to occupy them all with districts, which again would be made possible by the use of husbandry center. But because right now I have very little intel, I cannot make this particular decision. So let's go ahead. Before I end my 10, actually, I haven't talked a lot about the legendary deeds, and indeed it's about time I actually looked them up. So let's have a quick look what legendary deeds we got so far. Visionary leader. Pacify at least 8 villagers in order to gain this reward. Progression 0 out of 8, E rank 5 out of 6. Fairly unfortunate. It means that AI already started marrying villagers. Now usually, even I guess unless AI, you can get it early. Fairly early, because it's fairly easy to actually pacify at the villages. It does require you to be a little bit of a nasty bastard. However, if we are playing against AIs that are particularly aggressive or particularly caring about manufacturers, it can be a little bit tricky, and I had a little bit of a slow start in that regard as well. I wasn't quite able to start killing them as fast as I usually am when I play Ardent Mages, so it looks like Visionary Leader is gonna be out of reach for me. Bit annoying, but not the end of the world. As for Wealth Harvester, I guess Endless AI, it's, well, it's not impossible, and I already have 2 luxury boosters on me. So if I were to get some sort of third luxury booster, then this would be fairly awesome, but usually AI tends to get that as well. And as for Civilization Builder, I don't bother with this, myself with this when I'm playing as the Ardent Mages. There's no point. It gives you, yes, it does give you benefits, but it stops you from doing things in early game, which is complete opposite of what you want to do, which is why you should completely ignore that. What you do want is Industrial Megapole, and nothing aside from that. All the other things, well, if you get them, I suppose it's not bad, but you really only care about Industrial Megapole. So there is that. And even Industrial Megapole is not necessarily like game breaking, which is why, as I said, this expansion, the Guardians expansion, changes the gameplay of the Ardent Mages the least compared to other factions. Somebody's in Era 2 already, that's, well, that happens. I completed the quest. That's good. To be expected, but good. Let's have a quick look. Find the boss village that just spawned some baddies. Let's fight the village first, and then I'm gonna get my extra units, because this way I will save on their upkeep. Of course, I will not get to it in a single turn. That would be too nice with it. Also, looks like there are no resources in my southern region. Very annoying, but to be expected. That's just my luck. Settler is done as well, which is very nice. I'm gonna send it. It will possibly be attacked by the boss, but it is fairly fast, so it should be able to run away at a relatively good pace. The enemy is, of course, also very fast, but nonetheless, with the escaping things, I should be able to make my escape fairly easy. Now, as for my city, empowerment is definitely going to be something I want. And I actually am going to do, because of how things are with my current state of the economy and whatnot, I'm gonna rush the empowerment. That's not something I would always recommend, but right now this will allow me to get extra population in a single turn and get working on my empowerment, get my empowerment working 4 turns faster than usual. Of course, that's not really true, because I will then transfer some of my population into industry production, but this allows me to focus on other things after that, like for example making more of an army, which would be fairly nice. So let's go ahead and buy this out, and as soon as this is bought out, what I'm gonna do is, so quick look. This is actually a fairly good bonus if I put my Barrow Street right there. So I could start working on that, but this takes me whooping 6 turns. This will be less after I get my extra population. Or alternatively, I can go ahead and start working on some extra warlocks. But my main army will already be maxed out after I gain the extra units, and I don't want to get super aggressive just yet. So I'm gonna wait with the warlock, and I'm gonna start working the Barrow Street. A little bit more of a greedy build, but at the same time it will help me getting the influence I will need to declare war when I feel like it, and as well as allow me to maintain a very stable and healthy empire plan when I want to set it. So there is that. And I do have I would get rid of my happiness bonus though by setting this thing down. Yes, I would. In all honesty, I would. In fact, what I'm gonna do instead is work on my husbandry center. I will turn this city into a food production hub, because like I said, so many rivers, it's just too tempting. It really is too tempting. And it doesn't get rid of my happiness bonus quite so early. Later on, when I have the sewer systems, that's when I'll start spamming the districts. So my settler will get attacked, no doubt about that. So I'll obviously retreat, nice and easy. As for Empire plan, what I'm gonna go for is extra science. I could go for extra unit cost production. It depends again on what your surgery at that particular point in time is. But right now I do want to get a little bit more science. I don't believe I'll be too keen on making too many units within the next 10 turns. I will make some of them, of course, because I'm Ardent Mages, but getting extra 20% science will be important, so let's go ahead and do just that. Now let's also go ahead and talk to those guys nice and quick. What do they want? 10 gold in return for pacification. How about I just kill you? Or I could bribe them. Killing them would be a little bit difficult because they are boss, as you can see, not too bad at fighting. 108 life and a free counter. Free counter is what makes those guys particularly good against my zealots. So, you know what? In this case, I want to save my army. I'm just gonna go ahead and bribe them. Which gives me instant boost to population, and it doesn't make me lose health on my army, which I find to be fairly important. Of course, I could have instead earlier on gotten my zealots and then negotiated with those guys and potentially kill them if necessary, but I don't hate the way this went. Of course, I have way less dust right now, but this is also why I was saving dust so badly in the past. Because as you can see, this dust does tend to go away, but having the dust does give you more flexibility. Alright, this area doesn't look so hot for settling anymore. Yes, there is a dragon tree, which is very nice, but if we have a look, yes, I know there are Ursus nearby, but if we have a look, that's no industry whatsoever in this region, so I would probably want to move down south, or to this other territory altogether. This one I am not too keen on. There are some things around, but now let's scout a little bit more with my settler for the time being. Settlers are expensive to maintain, unfortunately, in an army state, but there's a little we can do with that, in all honesty. Alrighty then. My food boost is fairly good, which is nice, but at the same time, I really do want to get my structure done quickly. So I think I want to get my husband center done in 2 turns, because after that, I will get access to zealots and I'll start making more zealots. So let's go ahead and do just that. End the 10, drink a bit more water. My pillar has run out, but because it has run out, it is now cheap. Oh, come on, don't tell me they will attack me. No, they'll just block my way, which is fairly annoying. But now I will gain my extra units. Very nice. And also stuff, yada yada. You, please. Oh, I got the warlocks this time. That's nasty. I was hoping to get the zealots, because you can get the zealots, but I got the warlocks. That's, well, it does happen, unfortunately. Most of the time, no, at least most of the time for me, you get the zealots. But this time I got the warlocks. Much weaker in comparison, but still not a bad unit. I will need to attack those guys because leaving them in my territory is just too dangerous. And this will allow me to level up my army a little bit. And my hero as well, who has leveled up. And will I want to go for fire set as quick as possible? Why not? Scientific literacy is not going to be very useful right now. And because of that, I might go for Renaissance Thinker instead, actually. So let's max out Renaissance Thinker. And let's attack those guys. Nice and easy. It should be a very easy win. And in fact, I'm just gonna go ahead and auto-battle, because look at the advantage I have with the enemy. I shouldn't lose any units. Indeed, I have just simply taken a little bit of damage, and the enemy is completely dead. Which is nice. Let us settle down science thingy, nice and easy, and make sure that I can still settle a bar street next to it in later on, because keep in mind, you cannot make a bar street on top of your pillar, so always be careful with your pillar placement, don't block yourself out accidentally. Alrighty then, you dear settler who are now suddenly a scout, which is again why I love to give settlers speed. This allows you to change plans if the spot you wanted to settle in is not as great as it seems. Anyway, let's talk to those guys, see what they want. I don't even know who they are. Next Empire plan, ooh. It's an easy quest, but I don't like it because I don't really like putting people into economy and population ministry as other majors. It's not too horrible, it's just not something I like to do. Alright, this area, yeah, neo-dast and very little industry as well. Compared to that, this area also doesn't have any dust. Let me think, where would I rather settle? In this area where there's this amazing anomaly, or this area that doesn't have any anomalies but is overall a bit better? I think I'll just actually go over here and have a bit more of a poke around. See what I can see. Oh, there's another anomaly right there. Ruby Cactus Field, so I'll get a bit more dust from those things. One tile wasted, yes, but instant access to 2 anomalies, that's not too bad. I think I'll settle right there. Alrighty then. I need to think about making a new settler as well, because it looks like I'm not going to the offensive very quickly. It looks like the enemy city is far away over here, so I'll take my sweet time. I cannot wait for too long. Keep in mind, I am Ardent Mages, I'm supposed to be aggressive, but at the same time, if the enemy lets me be greedy, there's no point in not being greedy. So there's that. I do not want too many chiefs to be here. I want the ancient ruins to be here. So let's do that. Which ancient ruins do I need to explore, by the way? Those ones. Temple ruins. Okay, this should be fairly easy. In fact, if I complete it quickly, I might even get my legendary deed quickly as well. As for the slot, well, I could pacify the boss. What other options do I have? There is Ursa's village and also the Guaran village. Which first? I think I care about... Getting extra food is not that bad, but I'll see what other options I have. All of those options are not bad because they are frontline fighters that I could use. Ursa's probably being the most reliable frontline fighters, but their bonuses at the same time probably the one I care about the least right now. We'll see, I'll think about it. Okay, this city needs to have its population sorted out a little bit, and the Zealot will be done in 110. Oh wait, I messed up the husbandry center. My mistake. Okay, let's keep it like it is right now, and now I'm gonna end my turn. And this videocast has in fact been fairly long already, so Zealot technology is unlocked, which is nice, and this guy is trusting for whatever reason. Why is he trusting? Because we're far away? Yes, that's pretty much the only reason. So, okay then, I think I'll stop my video right here. Ladies and gentlemen, it was PANCZASU, also known as the Mighty Mix Spammer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you online.